into?
Hey guys, so I'm gonna start recording. So
Okay,
I just
no
want to
doubt.
be able to, I just want to be able to chop it up and put this out, promote it. So
No doubt. So what I was asking was, how did you get into becoming a professor? And what steps, like, was it a gradual? Did you start like adjunct doing something else and then moved into a 4-year university from a 2-year, or what was that? What did that look like?
So it was definitely gradual. I didn't initially think about being a professor,
Right.
but once I got my doctorate, that's one of the functions of having the doctorate, is to do research, make a contribution to your field. And a part of that is being a professor. So I actually did start off being an adjunct professor for a couple of years, just to see if I liked it. I did like teaching, and I always taught in online programs, so I didn't have to physically go anywhere. Gotcha. But I guess last year, during the pandemic. So I will say the pandemic hasn't been totally bad.
yeah,
George Mason actually, their social work department started a master of social work program online, and they were looking for coordinator / program director for that online program. So that's actually what I do. I'm the coordinator for their online program, and I'm an assistant professor. So I teach 2 classes during fall and spring and 1 class during the summer. And then I have administrative duties connected to the online program, and I see clients.
So you hustling for real. I mean, that's what it's about.
I do. Well, because I teach primarily clinical courses related to practice, related to, providing services to clients. I do try to see clients a couple of days a week just to keep those skills since I'm teaching the courses. So yeah, I actually saw a client tonight before logging on here.
Gotcha. How you doing, Mrs. Caldwell? Thanks for joining. So one last question. I know we're here for different business, but
this is all good, man. Let's just
let's
just keep going, and then we'll do an interlude. So let's just keep going.
Okay, absolutely. What would you recommend for someone trying to get into that? Someone who doesn't have their doctorate but maybe has a master's, and they're pursuing adjunct, or whatever the levels are. I'm not familiar with it, so forgive me for that. But there's parties who are looking for ways to do something they love in a field that they love, create a part-time stream of income, even though it might feel like full-time. Either way, I mean, yeah, that's part of the grind, right? So what are your suggestions on those steps?
So you can definitely be an adjunct professor with a master's degree. So you don't have you don't have to have a doctorate to do adjunct. I mean, I would say to get out there and try and see if you like it, and being an adjunct is a good way to do that. Most of the time, adjunct faculty are teaching just 1 class at a time.
Yeah.
One of the things that I did when I knew I wanted to look for an adjunct position, I went to a site called higheredjobs.com, and I created a profile, and even now I still get information from them. They'll send you like different postings. And honestly, definitely now, since we've been in the pandemic, online education is growing.
Yeah.
A lot of universities have expanded their offerings for online programs. So this would be a good time to look into becoming an adjunct professor.
There's big money, and not to cut you off, but there's big money in education, whether you're doing it from a professor level or if you're doing it from like tutoring perspective. There's good money to be made.
It is. And now that we're in this virtual space, you can do, so many different things with it. Like when I was an adjunct professor, I actually taught at a university in Indiana, and I was, still here in Northern Virginia. So that's one of the benefits of, kind of online programs, is you don't have to actually be in the location where the university is. And even now, for the online program, I have quite a few adjunct faculty that don't live in the Northern Virginia area.
Right. Nah, I love it. I got a ways to go before I can start, putting my resume out there to do stuff like that. But it's a realistic thought. I mean, I ain't
It
getting no
is.
younger, and at some point, I would love to, be able to do something like that. And we always talk about additional streams of income, so it's not
Oh
a
yeah,
bad thought.
I am definitely a fan of
Yeah,
multiple streams of income. And I look at even a position like being an adjunct professor, that's something you can do. Even, people say, oh, when you retire, but that's something that you could do even if are in your 70s and it's from home. You teach in one class like every, 8 weeks or whatever. It's something that I think you can still do. As a matter of fact, I do have a faculty in the online program. I think she's in her 70s. And she teaches one class, a semester. Sometimes during the summer, she'll take off, but it's at her own pace. So it is
right.
something that you can continue to kind of have that stream, especially, wanting to have those multiple avenues of income.
You find that online classes are getting like more popular, or is it about the same?
No, I think online is becoming a little bit more popular. Now, I'm gonna say this: I was not the student that could take a class online.
So
I
this
had
different
to
level of
do it.
It's tough.
Oh my gosh, that just wasn't me. And I had to do it for my doctoral program, and it was a research class. It was horrible. It was horrible for me. The class wasn't horrible. I'm just not that student. But I actually really enjoyed teaching online. You're using the technology. It's a different way to engage with students. And again, it gives you that flexibility. So, I generally go on campus about 2 days a week. And the other days I'm, kind of home teaching. And I teach asynchronously, so I don't have to log into my class at a certain time. I do pre-recorded lectures. I do virtual office hours via Zoom. So it just gives you a different way to connect and a different way to learn.
That's what I love about that, right? And not to say one thing is easier than the other, but the one thing I've seen with even in my own pursuit for different degrees, I've seen the instructors from an adjunct, maybe a 2-year perspective, essentially wash, rinse, and recycle material, right? And so when I look at it from a job perspective, and I'm not saying it's an easy thing by any means, but a lot of the itineraries and the course material doesn't change throughout the years.
Yeah.
It's just right. So yeah, okay. So it's just the teacher's efficiency on staying on top of everything.
Basically that's it. I know I've developed a couple of courses for the online program at Mason because it's still pretty new. It's only like 2 years old. And so, we're still developing those courses. But yeah, the for anyone that's, be an adjunct professor, all of the course material is there for you. You're really just facilitating that course material. And sometimes, adjunct faculty will talk about how their professional experience connects back to the course materials, but you don't really have to recreate anything.
Right.
Which makes it good. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Shauna, you on Shauna or Shana, forgive me if I'm mispronouncing your name. You're on mute. You want to hop in and say what's up?
Hello, everyone. Sorry I'm late. Just joined in. I missed it on Facebook, so I decided to join. I talk about online. I did my whole master's degree online.
Jeez.
Talking about hard, and it was nothing. It was all research. It was all writing. And I was so mad because I had a 4.0 until towards the end, and I got an A- on a paper. So I wound up having 3.96.
Well, kudos to you for completing that journey.
Yes, ma'am, because I don't know how you did that one right there. I told people I thought I was smart until I went to school and got my doctorate, and I was like, whoa, this is a different level. So going to school totally online for a master's degree, I'm gonna give you that one.
Yeah, it's tough.
I wish I would have kept going and did my doctorate. My brother and I were going to do it together, and we didn't. We both were going to do our doctorate together, and I did not.
Is it the course material, or is it those capstone projects at the end? Which? So
for my master's?
Yeah, master's. I guess what you guys are doing, like you ladies, I should say, are doing what thesis statements.
Thesis statements,
yeah.
It was papers. It was, like 10-page papers and different things. It was all writing.
Dissertation.
I think it was 13 to 15 classes that I had, and I was paying out of pocket for them. So I was paying $1,200 per class, because my undergrad I took out loans, but for my master's I paid as I went. So I was paying out of pocket for the class. So I was very diligent about making sure, because I was feeling that right then and there. If I didn't pass that class, I was literally doing it out of pocket. So
nah, that's the same, you know, as me. Like now having to take classes out of pocket, man. It's just you don't want to max those student loans out, man. It's crazy.
Yeah, and then when it's out of pocket, you don't want that savings account to get to a certain amount either.
It takes some time for the reimbursement to kick in from work, man. So
yeah,
no time for that. Yeah,
I feel you.
well, that's too. You got to have a B or above in order to get reimbursed as well. So that's another factor you had to think about, that I had to make sure that I stayed above, and what courses the job did pay for. So at the time, I was also teaching. I have a degree in elementary education and my master's in teaching and instruction. So also afterwards, for a year there, I worked as a educational advisor at Murray State, where I graduated from. So
nice. See,
Murray State, is that HBCU or no?
No, sir, it's not.
Okay, I didn't know. That's why I asked. Random question.
It's all good. All good.
Hey, well, we thank you for joining. You know, you weren't late. We appreciate it, man. You always come out to our stuff, so we appreciate that.
I try to support. I went out to y'all little joint the other day and had a cigar there in Herndon as well.
Oh yeah, how was that?
It was good. It was good.
You saw
Jay? Went by myself.
Oh,
I did. I went by myself. He gave me a little lecture. He was like, "Hey, you know, you're not a member." Okay, Jay, thanks.
What?
He go, "Well, welcome back." I'm like, "Okay, thanks." But now you're gonna give me a hard time as I'm leaving. Yeah, you need to buy at least $26 before you can come in here again. Okay.
Hey, we're gonna have that conversation offline. But
yeah, we'll have that conversation offline with you. Yeah.
See,
my bad. Sorry.
No, you good. You see how people act though, right? I mean, that's the thing.
We'll edit that out.
No.
We're gonna give it's only 7:47, so we said 8:00, man. So you good, Daphne, with waiting until 8, or?
I'm fine.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So I guess the thought process was, I mean, like we talked about, just having an open conversation, just like we just had. So we'll just keep it going and keep working out. Dre, Sean, y'all got anything before we really kick this thing off?
I was thinking about it today. Like I want to tap in and tap into resources, right? Resources available for I'm not going to say underclassed or but for those that don't have the financial means, right, to tap into those conversations with psychologists or whomever, that they can deal with those mental health issues instead of just being a statistic.
Yeah. Right. Or not even who to call, like what,
exactly.
Who to call, like do you look for a therapist? Do you look for a marriage counselor? Like what do you look for? So
you know us, we put a label on anything and the child just suffers with it for years, and it's like, hold up.
You can call your insurance company too, if somebody has insurance.
But I'm talking deeper than that though, bro. I'm talking for the ones that may not even know that they had those resources or don't have those resources.
Yeah, so because I didn't know, until a couple of years, I guess about 8 years ago, I didn't know that insurance companies have these different programs where you can get a couple, like 3 sessions for free before they start charging. I mean, what was the name of that? What's the name of that program, Dre?
EAP.
Yeah. Oh, Daphne, you probably know about it. Yeah.
Daphne,
Yes, every company should have an EAP program.
But we're talking generic employee access portal. Right.
So let's just say someone doesn't have insurance, or they don't have the financial means, because I did have some clients that were paying out of pocket, because there was a time when I didn't accept insurance. And even now I only accept certain insurances because of the reimbursement rate.
Hey, can we let's pause on that real quick. We want to hop into what we're doing. We're gonna go live, or how we gonna keep the format?
Yeah, we'll just go live. You want to welcome or you want me to do it?
Hop into it.
All right. Hey, welcome.
Sorry,
Welcome.
Daphne.
Sips and Sticks. And we in the lounge with Daphne, Dr. Daphne, man. We got a great show, man. We're going to talk about life pre-pandemic, during pandemic, after the pandemic. We're going to talk about education. You know, Daphne is a well-rounded person. She's a doctor, but not only that, she's a professional. She's a hustler. She teaches. She's a professor. So we're going to tap into all of everything she does. She has her own podcast, Wednesday Nights with the Doctor, I think it's named, right?
Wednesdays with the Doc. Yes.
Wednesdays with the Doc. So, you know, again, I'm Reggie. We got Sean and we got Dre here. And we got the crew, Sips and Sticks family joining in as well. So we want to thank everybody, but we most of all want to thank Daphne. Welcome to the show, Daphne.
Thank you guys for having me on again. Enjoyed it, definitely enjoyed it the last time. And I know we were just, you know, getting in there, and I, you know, of course I'm a talker, I'm a therapist by profession. So we just jumped in there and started talking. So one of the questions I think that we were discussing was, you know, kind of where to go for help, how to, you know, even start looking at seeking services, you know, how do you even know where to go? Right. Which is definitely one of the questions I get when I'm working with clients or hear from clients that, you know, people reach out to me, say it took them forever to find a therapist because they didn't know where to go. First and foremost, you know, there are a few different avenues. So if you don't have insurance, that doesn't necessarily mean that you can't see a therapist. Now, it can be a little expensive. I know my out-of-pocket rate is definitely different with having a doctorate and the clinical social work license. However, I do offer a sliding scale fee for individuals that want to see me that maybe can't afford my hourly rate. So just as an example, if I see a couple, you know, whether they married, dating, whatever, if I see a couple for my first appointment, which is the intake appointment, and that's where I'm going to gather all kind of information about what's going on, why they're coming to therapy, background, all kind of background information. That first appointment for a couple is $250 an hour. For an individual, it's $225 an hour. Now, after that, the individual sessions, and this is just where we're just meeting on a weekly or bi-weekly basis. For a couple, it's $150 an hour. And actually, it's the same for couples and individuals. That a regular appointment is $150 an hour. But again, I will offer a sliding scale fee for someone. And I have had clients that really wanted me as their therapist, but they just couldn't afford that hourly rate. And so, you know, I'll do a sliding scale fee. I mean, one in particular, I think I knocked their fee all the way down to probably $30 or $40. And, you know, as part of our code of ethics for social work, we are supposed to, you know, do some services that are, you know, pro bono or, you know, at a affordable rate, you know, for clients, because ultimately you want, you know, folks to get help and you don't want money to be a barrier. So there are some therapists that will offer a sliding scale fee. You can always check with your local kind of mental health agency. Every county, every city has some kind of local community mental health center or community services board here in Virginia. And you can check with them as well, because then they oftentimes will have therapists as well that you can see. Now, if you do have insurance, you do want to go to your, you know, insurance company. You want to find out, you know, what they're going to authorize for mental health services. I know that, you know, they've been working on changing the legislation a lot concerning reimbursement for mental health services, making sure employers are providing behavioral health or mental health benefits to their employees. So, you know, through your insurance company, you should, you know, have a certain number of sessions for mental health services. Some companies also have EAP, as we were talking about, employee assistance programs. And that's where the company itself will contract with a particular provider to provide services, mental health services or behavioral health services for their employees. And I actually, in addition to seeing clients, individually, I do have I guess it's a contract. I have a contract with a certain company to provide behavioral health services for the employees that have that benefit. So, that's another avenue as well. And, there are other sites, Psychology Today is a site that you can go and find licensed therapists in your area. They do make sure that they verify if the person is actually licensed. And, if all of that sounds overwhelming, there are different hotlines that you can call. You have the suicide prevention hotline. You have different now with, since we've been in the pandemic for the last 2 years, you have companies like BetterHelp and Talkspace, where you can also seek out services. And I think their rates may be a little bit different than, more traditional therapists in private practice. So there are some other avenues you can go to get help, but you just want to make sure, most importantly, that you find a therapist that's a good fit for you so that you will feel comfortable talking to that person.
What's the biggest misconception that you think there is in regards to mental health and what that means?
Well, one related to just seeking therapy. I think people automatically assume that the therapist is giving advice, and that's not what we do. The therapy is really about helping you to gain insight into your own patterns of behavior and what things are contributing to them. And through therapy, we're working on more healthy coping strategies so that, we're not repeating certain patterns. Now, when it comes to mental health, I mean, let's be real. The one thing that, I hear the most is people think, they're crazy. And just because you're talking to a therapist or you're experiencing symptoms of depression or you're experiencing symptoms of anxiety or you feel sad or you feel down doesn't mean that you're crazy. It just means that you're going through a time right now where you need to seek help from a professional. And I think if we can, kind of get rid of that stigma of just because you're seeking services that you're crazy or something wrong with you just because you're experiencing some symptoms of depression. I think if we can get rid of that stigma, more people will feel more comfortable seeking help, especially in our community. African-American community, historically, we don't go to therapists. And I do understand that there was a point in time where seeking therapy, or back in the day, they called it talking to a psychoanalyst. It was predominantly a white middle-class thing and predominantly a white female middle-class thing that you went to this analyst because that's all who could afford to go during that time.
Right.
And it was, predominantly white men who were, providing the services. And then if you think about some of the theorists, some of the theorists behind some of the theories that we use when we provide services, they were predominantly white men as well. So, the same with just the medical profession in general. Our community has a mistrust of medical professionals. So we often don't seek services that we should because of that mistrust. And I understand, because sometimes we're inappropriately labeled. Even, as a social worker, I've seen it with colleagues where, it's, you have to pay, as a worker, I have to pay attention to everyone's culture and what things are the norms for that culture. And, in American society, we view anything that's not what we consider quote unquote traditional American values to be abnormal. And so people of color have been inappropriately diagnosed or misdiagnosed because things that are respective to our culture or their culture has, been has been wrongly labeled. And so that leads to a mistrust, and it leads to us not seeking services, and it leads to us saying things like, so-and-so is crazy. They went to talk to, a therapist. And I think that would be the biggest misperception that I think.
Yeah, that stigma of not wanting to, I'm not going to go tell somebody else my business that, you know what I mean? Like, kind of, that definitely is a chain that has to be broken, man, because, I heard it far too many times from my elders in my family. You know what I mean? And I think I don't think I'm the only person. So that definitely is definitely a setback for us.
Yes, I mean, even in
those
my
layers
family,
deep.
Oh yeah, even in my family, that was the thing. You don't tell anyone, your problems. My family definitely didn't understand initially when I got my master's degree in social work. They didn't really know what that entailed. And initially, when I started as a social worker, I started off working in a mental health agency where I did case management. So I was actually going to people's houses. When I moved to the DC area, I was an investigative social worker for Child Protective Services. I can't even begin to talk about some of the things I've seen as a CPS social worker. So my family initially didn't really understand what I was doing. And even now as a therapist, I talk to them a lot about, hey, you need to go talk to someone about this or about that. But, it's still that stigma. And I'm educating my family all the time and talking to them all the time about, seeing clients, and it's okay to seek help. And
is that what drew you to doing the therapist work, recognizing those gaps that exist with dealing with child protective services and different layers of social work?
It is now. I didn't initially want to be a social worker. When I finished undergrad, I was actually going to go to law school. And I, went so far as I took the LSAT, the law school entrance exam, and I ended up interning with a lawyer in my hometown, and I was in Michigan at the time. And I spent so much time, at the jail, in the jails, at the courthouses, and I did not like it at all. And of course, it was a disproportionate representation of men of color, in the jails and in the courts. And I didn't like it. I knew that I wanted a career where I was going to help others. I knew that was, going to be the thing. I thought it was, again, going to be a lawyer. I was going to, work to make sure that we, got rid of all of this disproportionate representation. I kind of fell into social work. I was working at a mental health agency and, I was a case manager, but counseling and providing therapy actually came naturally for me. And I ended up having clients at the agency that would tell me things before they would tell their actual therapist. And it was actually an administrator at the agency that encouraged me to go back to school and get my master's degree. And so, I did a few different types of jobs in social work after getting my master's degree. I worked for, again, Child Protective Services. I worked in a halfway house for adult men who were incarcerated and had substance use issues. And then I worked for the public school system before getting my clinical social work license and going into private practice. It really wasn't until, honestly, when I made the decision that I wanted to consider becoming an adjunct professor, that I really thought about all of the, disproportionate representation. We started going through all of the things with the pandemic and with the COVID pandemic, we hit that racial pandemic where, all of the things with police brutality came out. And so when all of the, talk was happening about defunding the police and all of those things, my position was the police departments are just one system in this whole bigger system. And, we can't just focus on the police, because I know as a social worker, there were a lot of social workers that are in the quote unquote dominant or majority race that were not providing adequate services to people of color. And I felt like we couldn't just focus on the police department. So I knew that I wanted, for me, I feel like you have to be inside the system to change the system. So if I can educate the next generation of social workers to provide more competent, culturally sensitive, culturally aware services, then, that's what I wanted to do, especially, at some point, I won't be providing direct services. So I want to make sure that the people providing the next, generation of direct services are doing it in a way where everyone's needs are being adequately met. And it's not this underlying, systemic racism happening within the field.
I feel like what you just kind of speaking to your journey and like what you started with initially, wanting to be a lawyer, but then also, you know, going through that journey and then tapping into social work. There's a lot of recognition that has to take place, right? Because from a lawyer's perspective, when you look at mental health and maybe, you know, someone gets jammed up because they're misunderstood, when it's at that point when you need lawyer representation, it's almost too late, right? But when you look at it, and that's just my opinion, I could be off, but from the opposite end, from the social worker perspective, you're more in line to catch more of that activity and those thoughts prior to it turning into criminal activity because it's misunderstood behavior.
Yeah.
Right. And if you think about it, you know, your lawyer, they're going to primarily see things black and white. They're going to see things, you know, kind of according to the letter of the law. And so at the point where, you know, someone needs a lawyer and they're trying to, you know, plead temporary insanity, or they're trying to go that route, they're going to need a social worker anyway. Their lawyer is going to have to contact a social worker to even help them prove, you know, that level of competency or incompetency, you know, with the insanity plea. One thing that I am seeing in our program, I am starting to get social work students who actually have their law degrees. And I think that, you know, some folks are starting to see that when they, you know, work in certain arenas as lawyers, you do need to have, you know, a little bit of a background in social work, especially if you're working, you know, like family court as a lawyer, or even in some instances, you know, with, you know, criminal cases, sometimes you need to have, you know, that background in the social work in some jurisdictions.
Right. No, it's all relative. It's all relative, I believe.
Yeah, Dre, you I think you were gonna ask a question, Dre.
Oh yeah, Daphne. I was just wondering, could you speak to the difference between a psychologist and a therapist?
So,
Because I'm sure people, they want to, you know, do I need medication or do I need to go talk to somebody? And given the times we're in, where so many people are turning to, let's just say, drugs or pills or whatever, you know, a lot of times they don't know, is what I'm going through is just me needing to go talk to somebody, or is there some type of medical thing that maybe getting some meds will help me?
so I will say, and I'm gonna put the disclaimer out there, that I am not a fan or a proponent of psychotropic medication. Now, with that said, I do understand that, you know, sometimes there are folks that, you know, may have, some people really do have a chemical imbalance. They have, you know, kind of physiological things going on where they do need the medication, again, because of that chemical imbalance. But I am not a proponent of starting with psychotropic medication, especially for kids. One, you know, psychotropic meds, if you really listen, you know, now we see all these commercials on TV for medications. There are a lot of different side effects associated with psychotropic medication. Some of the medications will lead to other medical conditions. If you see people that are having uncontrollable tremors, different things with speeches, especially for folks that have been diagnosed as with schizophrenia or bipolar disorder, the medications are so strong that it leads to other medical conditions. So for me, especially for kids, I am not a fan of, you know, kids going on medication for things like ADD or ADHD or depression, or, you know, and again, for those that have chemical imbalances, yes, I know that it's needed, but just in general, I'm not a fan of that. And again, with kids, you know, they're still developing and growing, their bodies are changing, and you start putting them on a psychotropic medication, you don't know kind of the long-term impact for the child with the medication.
That dependency becomes ridiculous, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it does. And, you know, for me, my perspective has always been, okay, if you are going to go on medication or, you know, put your child on medication, they still need to be talking to a therapist as well. So you have a psychiatrist that prescribes medication. psychiatrists will prescribe the psychotropic medication, they're not necessarily going to be doing any type of talk therapy. They're literally just prescribing the psychotropic medication, and they are checking levels to make sure, like your organs are not being damaged, because again, some of this medication can be really strong. Now, when it comes to a psychologist or a social worker or a counselor, in some respects, they are the same. A psychologist, a social worker, and a licensed counselor can all provide therapy. Everyone just has a different modality.
What was that word you just used?
A different modality.
What's that? What does that mean?
More like a framework for how they do therapy, or a framework for how they do counseling. So for instance, I'm a licensed clinical social worker. So social workers are going to look at things from a little bit more of a holistic standpoint and look at how a person is interacting in their environment. In my experience in working with psychologists, because I used to work with a psychologist when I worked in the school system, most psychologists are focusing more so on testing. They're going to do some of that more educational testing. They may also do more behavior testing. So your psychologists are going to focus a little bit more on, kind of how the mind is functioning and doing tests, different kind of rating scales, behavior tests, scales for depression and things like that. And then a licensed LPC or a licensed professional counselor, they're literally providing counseling services, pretty similar to a therapist, but everyone has a little bit of a different framework for how they do it. So someone can see any licensed psychologist, social worker, or therapist for talk therapy. But if you want medication, you're going to go to a psychiatrist to get the medication prescribed. But again, I really do recommend, if you're going to get medication, you should be doing some talk therapy. And the goal should not be to stay on the medication long term, unless you have, again, a chemical imbalance, or you do have a condition that is, more severe, like schizophrenia or bipolar disorder, that you really do need the medication to control those symptoms. And then you want to think about, what do you really want to go to therapy for? If you're having relationship issues, you do want someone that has a specialty in couples therapy, or you want to go to a licensed marriage and family therapist. Now, I do have a specialty. One of my specialties is working with couples and families. I have the clinical social work license, and I do some additional trainings to work with couples and families. If you're just looking, to work on yourself, then you just want an individual therapist, but you want to be able to identify what are some of the things that you're seeking therapy for.
So what you mentioned is that, in my interpretation, is that unless there is a diagnosed, like you said, a bipolar disorder or a chemical imbalance, a lot of these issues can be, people can get to the other side, for lack of better words, and with more conversation, right? And just talking it out.
Yes, I work with a lot of clients that have symptoms of anxiety and depression that are not on medication, and they see an improvement, with us doing regular sessions, them using the coping strategies that, we do in session, and they don't go on medication. Now, as a therapist, even though I started with saying that I'm not a proponent of medication, if I have a client that I've been working with for a certain amount of time, and their symptoms are starting to get a little bit more severe, and they're not controlling their symptoms of depression, and they're moving into, having more suicidal ideation, I may refer them to a psychiatrist. We have a few psychiatrists that we work with, but again, I'm going to work with that psychiatrist to talk about what we're doing in therapy, what their recommendations are. And I do have some clients that they do go on medication. They set a goal to be off the medication. So, you don't have to be on the medication forever. Some folks end up just getting a low dose of medication, but you can actually, see improvements without medication.
Yeah. Are you finding that, on a lighter note, are you finding that as this pandemic is going on, you're seeing less and less cases, or maybe people are, starting to transition, or is it still, I know for me, because, the constant hearing, the sickness and and all this stuff, it's draining, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So are you finding that it's getting less intense?
I wish I could say it was getting less.
Yeah.
I think I was sharing earlier. So I'm gonna say like October-ish, I probably hit my max for clients, and I see clients part-time because I teach. So I see clients Wednesday, Thursdays, and sometimes on Saturdays. Probably in October, I hit my max for clients. And so I use Psychology Today, and that's where I get referrals from clients. I actually turned off my notification that I was accepting new clients and turned on my notification for waitlist. Literally from October to this point, I still have people emailing me like, hey, I know you have a wait list, or I know you're not seeing clients right now, but can I, get on your wait list? Or because I also have the other company that sends me referrals because I do their EAP. I'll probably have been getting, I think my clients have probably tripled from like October to now. And
Since
now
the pandemic started, or just
since the pandemic started. But the last few months, I saw a really big increase to the point where I'm like a hard no now. Like I can't take anyone else. And I am actually transitioning. Now the good note is I am transitioning some clients off my caseload because they've made progress, they've met their goals, they're doing well. So I'm transitioning a few clients off my caseload. But so in January, I'll open, my book up a little bit, but I also, for myself, I have to be mindful because I have a limit as to the number of clients I can see in one day. So
keep your peace too, right?
Yeah,
oh, absolutely. And I haven't been, full disclosure, y'all know I'm good at disclosing when I'm not fully following my own advice.
Right.
My maximum, I think 3 clients for me, 3 clients a day, or three clients each day that I see clients is my max. I've been going above my max a little bit. Like I've had some days where I've been seeing 4 or 5 clients, and I can tell when I get to that 3rd client, I'm about ready to shut down. And that's not good for me or the client. So come 2022, I'm going to do better.
Yeah.
My daily max.
That brain exhaustion is something else, man. Ooh,
I'm gonna tell you, yes, I'm gonna tell you, and people, I shouldn't say people, my actual real friends understand, and they don't get offended when I don't want to talk on the phone.
Yeah.
Even, I think I told y'all I saw a client earlier today. Usually it takes me a little bit of time to pull myself together after seeing clients to actually want to talk to people. But because I knew I was doing the workshop tonight, I do a little trick with my brain to keep myself like, okay, look, you can't shut down after this client. You still got one more thing left to do. But my friends, they do understand that I don't, texting me is fine. I'm not that person that's going to get upset that we only texting. Because by the time I finish, I teach at the university. So I'm in meetings, see clients at least, 2 or 3 days a week, and I'm always talking. By the time I see that last client, I'm done. And for me, the thing is, I'm seeing clients at home now because, we're still in the pandemic. I'm not ready to go back into the office. So I don't have that drive time. Usually my drive home from my office is where I can decompress. By the time I get home, I'm cool. I haven't had that in the last couple of years because I'm working from home.
Right. Hey, Gerard, did you have something that you wanted to chime in with?
I did. I just want to say I commend you. I commend you for going into this field because I went through reintegration counseling, and when I came back from overseas, and they helped me to transition. And then my wife and I also went to counseling because being in the military for over 26 years, there is a lot of things that I had to deal with. So I commend you for going into this field, because if we had more counselors, more clinical psychologists, more of all of that working together, I think it would be helpful to a lot more people than just, just the ones that seek it.
Yeah.
No, that is true. I mean, and thank you. And I'm glad that you said that, because I don't often hear, veterans or folks that were in the military talk about seeking services. And that's one of the things, when I decided to go into private practice, actually working with, military, working with vets was one of the things that I wanted to do, because I felt like it wasn't enough services provided to, help folks reintegrate and debrief when they came back from tours of duty. And so I do provide some services, to folks. I do accept TRICARE. So I do end up getting some vets, some military households that I work with as well. So thank you for your service.
Daphne, we've talked about this before. How do you deal with, because I'm sure you hear a lot of crazy stuff. It's like, so how do you decompress from that? Because I remember when I was a trainer, some of the stuff people would tell me, I get off work, I just sit in the car because it was a lot, so, and you seeing clients back to back. And, so how do you decompress from that?
Well, first, let me say, I am not Dre's client that he was talking about that he had to compress from. So let me just put that out there right now. He ain't talking about me. It took me a little bit to figure out what worked for me. And in all honesty, I never thought I would be that person, but actually meditation. And actually between coming tonight to this, to the Zoom tonight and seeing a client, I actually did meditate. Honestly, meditation really does relax me. That is how I decompress. I usually start my day with a meditation. And then depending on what's happening in the day, I might do one like at lunchtime or in the evening. And I've also, I don't know if it's just kind of my makeup, but I've always been good at kind of compartmentalizing things and leaving work at work. So I've never been that person, as even throughout my whole social work career. I've never been that person that took my work home with me. Even when I worked in CPS, and when I worked in CPS, because I did have the background in mental health and I worked at night, when I worked for CPS, I would always get sent out on the really severe cases. I just remember a time where when I worked in CPS, I got sent out on all of the child fatalities. And so I had to investigate all these deaths of children. That was when I knew it was time for me to leave CPS, but I still didn't take things home. And part of that for me was I just tried to make sure I gave it my all while I was at work. So I've always been good at compartmentalizing, but now really meditation for me, I set some pretty good boundaries with, I don't get on social media every day. I don't, and I tell this to clients too. These are some of the things that I, work with clients on when we talk about what does your day look like. I don't scroll social media every day. I don't look at my cell phone first thing in the morning. I don't look at social media first thing in the morning. Now on my cell phone, I have different apps like the Bible app, meditation apps that I do when I wake up in the morning. But I don't look at social media. I don't look at social media before I go to bed. And I don't watch the news before bed. I watch the news in the morning.
I finally learned that.
Man.
So the thing that I tell clients is that whatever you watch before you go to bed is going to be in your spirit when you sleep.
Yeah.
And you don't need to be inundated with the news. You just need to be informed. And the news doesn't change. Whatever news they show at like 8 o'clock in the morning, it is generally the same stories at 12 p.m., at 6 p.m., and in the evening or 10 o'clock, unless something breaking happened. But generally the news is all the same. So for myself, I had to learn that I couldn't do that. And I'm pretty mindful of what I watch on TV. And because, I do listen to people's problems, people don't often tell me good things. I tend to watch things on TV that are just mindless when I do watch TV. So I watch stuff that I know is going to make me laugh, like I'm a little bit of a nerd. So I watch Big Bang Theory all the time because it makes me laugh. You know, it's funny. I may watch, you know, some Netflix comedies. Full disclosure, a little bit of a Hallmark channel, you know, got to see the good in the world. So
Right.
I watch stuff like that because of what I do and what I hear. But honestly, most importantly, it really is, I meditate a lot. I definitely start my day with, you know, scripture and prayer. Even though I know Dre knows I don't necessarily like it, I do work out. One of my non-negotiables in my day is to do some kind of cardio. So I usually do some kind of walk. I do some kind of, you know, usually I mix it up and I might jog with it. Sometimes I might do my walk, and every few steps, I do jumping jacks. So I try to get some exercise in as well. I found out for myself, I like being outside to exercise. So if I start my day, even when it gets cold outside and it's snowing, if I go outside and start my day outside working out, I feel much better. So it's just something that I have to do. And I can tell the difference in the days that I don't do it and in the days that I don't meditate. I feel a little bit more kind of off balanced and a little bit more stressed. So I do try to make sure that I meditate every day.
That's a lot of the guidance that we've been, well, aside from the meditation, right? Outside activity, you know, getting up, you know, a lot of us have been in this dynamic lately where we've been kind of secluded at home.
Yeah.
Pretty much, right? So can you speak to what meditation looks like, right? You know, my understanding, my interpretation, I've never done it, right? I came from a household where my stepmom, she made sure when she got home from work, she dropped everything, she went and meditated. And I don't know, you know, I know at least it happened at least once a day. But what should an individual be doing in that time frame to make it work?
So I think meditation looks different than what we have thought about with, you know, the Buddhists and the chanting.
Right.
For myself, you know, there are a lot of meditation apps that you can use. And I primarily use the meditation app for some guided meditations, you know, some, you know, music. I even have meditation playlists. So I'll play just the meditation music. Honestly, meditation really is just you being still and being quiet. People think that when they meditate that they have to somehow control their thoughts. You don't. You want to let your thoughts just come and go. It really is being in that moment. Now, for me, I do make sure I do close my eyes. I make sure that I'm, you know, in a relaxed state, and I'm either doing the guided meditation or if the music is playing. I have like different, you know, kind of positive affirmations that I might say in my head as I'm meditating. But there really isn't for me like a right or wrong way. It really is just sometimes just being still, being in the moment, being quiet, and not, you know, running around. And I think we all need that space in our day where we are having at least, you know, you can do a 10-minute meditation and feel, you know, the difference. And everyone needs that space to kind of sit still, get quiet, not let your mind go, not have your mind focused on the next thing you have to do or this bill you got to pay. I would recommend like Headspace is a good meditation app. I use Insight Timer because they have some good meditation ones. And for what I found with Insight Timer is that they also have a lot of meditation teachers that are of color. And there are some different, you know, kind of focuses of the meditations that you can do. Even on Apple Music, they have meditation playlists. Get you a good meditation playlist, sit still. You don't have to cross your legs, or I do cross my legs, but you don't have to cross your legs or anything like that.
Mainly just be present, right?
Just to be present,
Yeah.
you know, work on your breathing, because often we don't realize, and I will say this, even though he probably didn't think I was listening, Dre would also talk a lot about watching your breath when you worked out. And I never realized like that a lot of times I'm like, my body was so tight and clenched and I was holding my breath until we started working out. So now I'm more mindful of making sure that I'm actually breathing and not holding everything in. And that's really what, even with meditation, it reminds me of that.
Yeah. So we're talking about different methods of how to cope, and you know, it sounds like you definitely have a control of that, and what you do to use that. What other tools that you could recommend maybe for us to use, or anybody that may want to start just trying to take those steps and getting in control of your thoughts and feelings and stuff like that? What other options are there out there other than meditation? We know working out for sure. What else?
I really also do try to connect for clients, or just anyone that I'm working with, their physical health and their mental health. A lot of times we talk about mental health and physical health as if they're not related, but they really are. Because if your body doesn't feel good, or you don't feel right in your body, or you're sick, or you got some physical ailment, it's going to impact your mental health. You're going to be sad, you're going to be depressed, you're going to be anxious, you're going to be fearful. And it's vice versa. If you're sad all the time, and that sadness is leading to depression, then you're not going to be motivated to eat healthy. You're not going to be motivated to get up and exercise. You're not going to be motivated to take care of yourself or take care of your hygiene. So for me, they both go hand in hand. So just some more practical things that I think we need to do. Get your annual physicals, get your blood work done, know what's happening in your body. Because the one thing that I will say also is when you have certain mineral or vitamin deficiencies in your body, that can also mimic certain mental health conditions like anxiety or depression. I know for myself, I've always, been slightly anemic. When my iron is really, really low, it's going to mimic depression. It's going to, impact, my moods. When your vitamin D is really low, it can also mimic some symptoms of depression. It can make you really sad. It can, make you really down. So when you have that deficiency in some of your vitamins and minerals in your body, those things can also mimic some of the symptoms of different mental health conditions. So you do want to know what's happening in your body just on a more practical level.
What if you're not paying attention to none of that, and then that mimics depression because you're supposed to be doing it?
Right. And this is why you need to, even though we don't like to, this is why we need to go to the doctor. And I'm going to full disclosure, I don't like going to the doctor.
I don't either.
I literally just went and got all of my blood work done. The past couple of weeks, thank God I'm healthy, because he knows that oftentimes I just keep pushing it back because I don't like going to the doctor. But you just have to go get that blood work done. You have to know what's happening. You want to just make sure that you know what's happening, in your body, because all of that works together. You also want to pay attention again. I like to give clients practical things too. You want to pay attention to what you're eating. Mm-hmm. And I know, clients, people are probably like, oh, what does that have to do with mental health? Well, the Americans have what we call, I know Dre knows this, the SAD diet. Our diet is sad. We just eat stuff that does not promote good health all the time. So you do want to pay attention to how much, are you eating sugars? How much salt are you eating? How much fatty foods? How much processed foods? How much fast food? And you really do want to incorporate more fresh fruits and fresh vegetables into your diet. And if you're taking certain medications, and especially if you're taking psychotropic medication, you want to pay attention to how much caffeine you're intaking as well. Some of those things can interact with certain medications. And again, they can mimic symptoms of certain mental health conditions. Now, there are some other things that, folks can do that I recommend just on a regular basis. Things like journaling, kind of writing out your feelings, writing out your thoughts. And even if you don't want to write, everybody has a cell phone. You have the notes app in your cell phone. You can password protect it if you don't want anyone reading. Sometimes just writing out how you feel, writing out what you're thinking about certain things can help as well. And those are some things that you can do just without seeing a therapist. I do use journaling as a technique when I'm working with clients, but I also journal on my own. It's something that you can do without a therapist. There is another app that I use with some of my teen clients, and it's called Daylio, Daylio. You can use that app to track your moods, and you can keep track of what your average mood is. The teens really like it because you can use little emojis to determine, to, kind of show how you feel. You can make notes about the day so that you know kind of what things impacted how you feel. So I think doing things like that can help you recognize kind of like what's going on. Like for me, I know I get stressed when I have overpacked my day. So I try to be mindful of how I schedule my day, so that I don't get, overly stressed. You really want to pay attention to what's happening, with you. And, sometimes just taking these extra steps.
I think
I love to write. So journaling is a big thing that I promote with everyone I talk to.
I think part of what you touched on, that was a question that I had, and probably my last question. So I've been seeing a lot about Generation Z and the amount of the amount of mental health issues that are ongoing right now with that particular generation, right? And I think like when we look at the grand scheme of things, I can't say they were primarily impacted, but they definitely felt the brunt of what came with COVID, right? They were the generation that dealt with virtual learning. A lot of these kids dealt with not being in school with their peers. On the top end, on the upper age of that end, you're dealing with 22, 23, 24-year-olds that were attending college in person, but now doing it virtually, who are also reeling in from the effects of the starts of their career, and how even the decline of HR people being in office makes a difference in that whole hiring process. So what, in terms of coping mechanisms, what do you recommend? And I know you suggested some like journaling and putting stuff in the notes, but for those kids that I think just from my perspective and my understanding, I think the older generation, we kind of adapted a little bit more. We had to maybe learn technology a little bit more, but we made it work, right? A lot of us were fortunate enough or blessed enough to be involved in a career that kind of was adaptive to the pandemic. But then on the opposite end, for Generation Z, they're still sticking their toes in the water. They're figuring it out. So,
it's fun, and I'm laughing because I once thought of myself as being an extrovert, but I think in the pandemic, I realized I am a true introverted. I'm an introverted extrovert because I was cool.
Right.
I was like, I can talk to everybody via Zoom. I'm good. Hey.
Yeah, true story.
But you think about it in terms of, kids are at that developmental age where they do need to be social. And school was the one place where they were going to get some consistent socialization. And so one of the things when, at the height of the pandemic, I was working with some families. And one thing that I noticed was that when the pandemic hit, families, parents were not keeping the same structure that they kept when kids were in school. So, when the pandemic started, it was almost like kids were on a virtual, like summer break, extended Christmas break, because no one was keeping schedules. No one, was having any structure. So one of the things that I did tell parents, and that's one of the things that I'll say here, is you still want to keep structure, for your kids, regardless of what's happening or what's going on, or even if it's summer break. I tell parents, still keep some kind of schedule for your kids. They need to wake up and go to bed at the same time every day.
Yeah.
You need to have a structure as to, what time they're going to eat lunch. You want to have structure to, even, the weekends can be a little bit less structured, but you still want to make sure that, kids really do thrive on consistency and structure. So that's one of the things that I did tell parents. And now that, kids were not able to socialize at school, and now they're slowly getting back into school. One of the things that I did tell some of the parents that I worked with was kind of the same thing that I mentioned here tonight, was still kind of getting out. Even though your kids couldn't, in person go visit their friends, there are other things that you could do to get them outside, to get them, socializing. Northern Virginia has parks everywhere, playgrounds, even doing things together as a family. maybe doing some, family game nights, doing, more things together outside as a family. And again, really providing some structure, for kids. What I have been doing with some of the teens that I work with, we, kind of talk about other things that they can do to get that kind of socialization with friends before school opened back up. They would do like the Zoom things with their friends, or if their parents were comfortable and they had certain friends that they knew had either, been vaccinated or knew that their families weren't, you were limiting their, kind of social activity. They have friends that they could go visit. So even creating their own little bubbles. But, now the teens that I work with, we have been working on kind of that adjustment back into school and social, getting back out there. So we do a lot of processing of, kind of what things are like for them to be back in school. But I will say, for most of the teens that I work with, now that school is back in session, I'm seeing less anxiety with them because they are back in school. They can see their friends more. So I'm not seeing as much anxiety with teens now because school has reopened.
Yeah.
What I am seeing though from some teens is now we're hitting this period where we're moving into, the winter months, and it's getting darker outside earlier. And
I'm glad you touched on that. Yeah.
Yes, a lot of people do suffer from the seasonal affective disorder. And so for some of teens that I work with, or some clients in general, we talk about things that they can do in their house to manipulate the lighting, to give the impression of that kind of summer lighting that is still bright, it's still light out, changing some of the decorations, in the house, or some of the decor in the house to make it more open and light. Because some people, really do suffer from seasonal affective disorder because it is getting so dark early and it's staying, darker outside longer.
So Daphne, switching gears more to the parents, a lot of parents are they're having to go back to work. So what recommendations would you have for people that are dealing with, that anxiety of going back into the office?
First and foremost, to really ask yourself, what is contributing to being anxious? Are you anxious about catching COVID? Are you anxious about, just being in close proximity to certain people? I think really asking yourself what's going on, what's contributing to the anxiety. When I'm in session with clients that are suffering from anxiety, I have them, a lot of times with anxiety, it's a control thing. And it's kind of a fear of the unknown because you don't know what's going to happen. So I have clients ask themselves, that's everybody. So I have clients ask themselves a series of 4 questions to help them take back some of the control and process through the situation. So I have clients ask themselves, what do I want to happen? What's the best thing that can happen? What's the worst thing that can happen? And what will I do if that worst thing happens? A lot of times when we're experiencing anxieties because we've gone to the worst case scenario.
Off the rip.
totally off the rails. And it's this whole idea of we don't know what's going to happen. So if you process through like that, then you've taken some of that control back. So for instance, going back to work, what do I want to happen? I want it to be drama-free. I want to go back to work and nothing happens in the office. Everything's all good. What's the best thing that can happen? Just that I go to work, there's no issues, no problems. I come home, it's all good. What's the worst thing that can happen? Well, I go to work and somebody in my office tests positive for COVID. Okay, that's the worst thing. If the worst thing happens, what am I going to do? I'm going to go get tested for COVID. You've taken back now some of that control because you have a plan for what you will do if the worst thing happens. And that's really what, you can use that in any situation. But, again, the idea behind anxiety is that it's typically because we don't know what's going to happen. We're fearing the unknown and we've gone to the worst thing that can happen. So if you go through that, you're taking back some of that control.
Yeah, I will
There
say.
is another exercise that I do that anyone can do this, but I do it with clients because I use a treatment modality called CBT, or cognitive behavioral therapy. It helps you to get at kind of your automatic thoughts. So all of us have those thoughts that immediately come into our head when something happens. Those are our automatic thoughts. Generally, our automatic thoughts tend to be negative depending on the situation. So CBT helps individuals recognize their automatic thoughts and use techniques to reframe it so that they develop more healthy coping strategies. So there is an activity you can do where you record whatever situation happened to upset you, or that was, upsetting for you or not a good situation for you. You're going to record that situation, and then you're going to write down what your thoughts were about that situation. Then you're going to write down what your feelings were about that situation. You're going to look at your thoughts and your feelings to see how it led to whatever behavior that you displayed, because generally that's what happens. We think a certain way about something, then we start feeling a certain way, and then it leads to some kind of behavior. A lot of times the behavior is not healthy because our thoughts have been so off the rail. Our thoughts have been generally so negative. We're feeling bad. We're feeling all of these different emotions. And then we do some behavior that then makes us feel worse because we are like, we know we shouldn't have done that. So this exercise helps you to connect your thoughts with your feelings to then the behavior that you take.
Wow, that makes sense.
That's dope. So for everybody on here, this call is recorded. So anything y'all want to tap back into, reach back out to us. We're coming upon 8:46. Dr. Daphne, would you do us the blessing of giving us your contact information, social media?
Hey, let's do one thing real quick, man.
Okay, absolutely.
Is there anyone on here that has a question that they may want to ask? I'd like to give them an opportunity to ask a question if they have one. And if not, no problem.
You did good.
All right, well, Daphne, hey man, can you go ahead and tap into your social media, all your information,
All right, so that's my email. All of my social media is pretty much the same. So on Instagram, it's Wednesdays with the Doc 17. On Twitter, is Wednesdays with the Doc. And my Facebook page is also Wednesdays with the Doc, or Facebook is also my name, Dr. Daphne King. So I did everything Wednesdays with the Doc. The guys know it's my podcast. So I generally do a podcast 2 Wednesdays a month where I'm talking about things related to mental health, providing just kind of what we did tonight, providing some tips and strategies. Full disclosure, I haven't done it in a little bit. As y'all heard, my schedule got crazy. My schedule got really busy with clients, with the university, but I am going to get back to podcasting. I think before we hit Christmas, I'm going to do one episode. A few years ago, I did a podcast episode to kind of, prepare everyone for the holiday season and to gave some tips and strategies for managing the holiday season that I think probably still applies today. The one thing that I said, one of the tips that I've said in that episode or those couple of episodes was just to have fun. The holiday season isn't supposed to be stressed. Don't focus on the gifts or the decorations. It's just supposed to be a time to have fun, enjoy family, be thankful, prepare for the upcoming year. So I am going to do one episode before Christmas to kind of remind everybody of, really preparing for the holiday season. But in January, I'm going to get back to more regular podcasting because it is something that, I enjoyed and I like, I think as I shared with the fellows before, the whole idea of educating communities of color about seeking mental health and knowing that it's okay to seek mental health services is something that I'm really passionate about. That I think that, we always talk about leaving an inheritance for our kids. And we talk about it from the standpoint of money, but we don't talk about it from the standpoint of health or mental health. And we want to make sure that we're leaving a generation of healthy individuals, healthy children in our families. So anytime I can talk about mental health and educate on it and talk through, strategies to being healthy, I'm always ready to do that.
Well, yeah, no, we do thank you, and I think that's the focus from pretty much everybody that I normally talk to, and probably that's joined is getting in control of the things that we didn't have control with, or our ancestors may not have had control with, or our parents or whomever. So, we do definitely want to thank you for taking your time out from your busy schedule to jump on here and conversate with us. I look forward to definitely, I've listened to a couple of your podcasts, and I look forward to definitely hearing new stuff from you and fighting this fight with you and fighting this fight against mental health. So I definitely, we thank you, and we applaud you for everything you've done and you continue to do for the community. So in saying that, does the fellas, y'all got anything for Daphne or anybody else?
I just want to say, definitely drop us the information when you do your podcast prior to Christmas.
Yeah.
I would love to be a part of it, as I'm sure the brothers on the call would be, possibly Sister Shayna Caldwell. We always support. We appreciate the love, and just drop us what you got going on. We'll always support.
Yes, ma'am.
Absolutely. Thank you.
You got anything, Dre?
Thank you.
No, I appreciate you, Daphne. We go way back, so it's always good to catch up.
I'm not that client. I'm not the one.
You never know. I'm still a little bitter you don't want to be my therapist, but I understand.
Well, and
Daphne said she ain't messing with it, Dre.
we definitely want to thank everybody who jumped on, ladies and the fellas, man. We really appreciate you guys, man, and hopefully y'all got something from this call, man, and we're just gonna keep it coming. Again, this is just another episode of the Better Us project that we do every winter season, and we're gonna continue to keep cranking these calls out. Hopefully we'll have Dr. Daphne in person at the Cigar Lounge, and we'll get into just that'll be some personal conversations as far as what she does for herself and stuff like that, but everything she spoke about and everything we try to do is very important to just being better people, man, and better people in this community, and taking full advantage of where we are as a country and as a world right now. And this is the best time, is now to go ahead and get yourself in line, man. So
each one teach one.
Each one teach one. We want to continue to keep pressing on, man. We thank everybody and applaud everybody for the fight that they keep fighting. Keep fighting that fight. We thank y'all. We'll talk to y'all later.
All right, love y'all.
Peace.
Peace.
Out.
Thank you.